start.
There we go. We're going live now. Perfect. Sorry, people, for the delay.
I'm hearing myself back. Sorry. That's always irritating. Sorry, people. It is always joyfully and just a bit of a jest. There's always something going wrong, and that is lovely. That's how my planning goes with these things. There's none. I'm really looking forward to today's session of the ND Speakers Corner. Again, for the first time, if somebody turns in, it's where anybody can talk about anything about neurodivergency, what they want. It can be anything, but can be a bit, let's say, edgy, but as long as it is in a respectful way, in a correct way, I'm all okay with it. I'm here today with Alice Reeves, and she knows that I sometimes say things that people frown upon. And not on a purpose way. Alice is a good and dear friend of mine. We're working also together, both sides of the business. I'm part of the Joyfully Different, but I'm also with my SEO company. I work with Alice, and it's a joy to work with her. She's a wonderful person. And today we're going to have a nice little chat about ADHD and women in business. So I would like to give the words to Alice now, if she has anything to add to what I just said, and also a bit of an introduction to herself.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction, Heike. And yeah, I'm sure we'll come back to it later, but I think working with you just really hammers home when two neurodivergent people with the same communication style come together, just how easy it is to work with you in ways that I've really struggled in the past to work with other consultants. But yeah, my name's Alice, and I'm 37 years old, and I was diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago at the age of 35. And I've run my own business for 7 years. And so over the last 2 years, essentially, I've been through a process of really, quite radically changing the way that I work on a day-to-day business, the way I do business, to make sure that it actually works for my ADHD brain. Because up to the point before my diagnosis, and for the 20 years before that, I was diagnosed with a whole multitude of different mental illnesses and medicated for things that I don't believe I have. I believe all of it was undiagnosed ADHD. And, I've tried all of these different medications, therapy, alternative therapies, well-being practices, coaching, personal development, just trying to sort my brain out. And I couldn't understand why I struggled in so many areas of business that other business owners seem to find so easy and so simple. So when I got my diagnosis, all of that really started to make sense, everything that I'd gone through. And where I have been learning so much stuff about my ADHD, I soon started to combine that with my business consulting and my work. I started to work with more other business owners that were neurodivergent. And then all of that led me into co-founding Joyfully Different this year with Mark Blake, my co-founder. And we are a non-profit that specifically exists to support neurodivergent business owners. So business owners, not just those with ADHD like me, but also autistic business owners, those with dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, OCD, bipolar disorder, BPD, anything that falls under that neurodiversity umbrella, that means that we face more challenges than the neurotypical people in society when it comes to business. Our goal is to support those business owners like us to find ways to thrive and grow their businesses and make entrepreneurship joyful for neurodivergent founders is our mission. Because I've seen entrepreneurship being joyful. I've seen so many business owners thinking, why do they look like they're having such a great time, whereas I just permanently feel like I'm drowning? And so that's the story of Joyfully Different, and how Joyfully Different was born, and yeah, why I'm so passionate about helping other business owners, because I think if I'd have been diagnosed sooner, then I would not have faced half of the struggles and breakdowns and burnouts that I've had throughout my career.
Oh, definitely. It's like, just to add to it, just like what you're saying now is the same story as mine. Is, let's say, I'm also a late diagnosed ADHD person, and if I knew everything what I know now, life would be totally different. And this is also the one thing what I enjoy, let's say, with organizations like Joyfully Different, is like coming together with your peers. It's so much better. It's like yesterday I was also talking to somebody. It's like if you're neurotypical, you look at a conversation between neurodivergents, you think like, what the hell is going on? That one is saying something, that one is saying something, and is, let's say, at the end we don't even cover the topic where we went to talk about. And
Yeah.
sometimes you walk away. But the nice thing, and also is, let's say, with some other people in the group, is when we talk, there's this creativity. We bounce ideas off each other. Is, let's say, oh, did you think about this and that? And beautiful things start to happen. And that's also because Joyfully Different, it creates that safe space.
Yeah.
Where we can be ourselves. And as neurodivergent business owners, there is something where we really excel. And the same, like our communication between us, each other, is, let's say, yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I have an idea, pop it in the message because else I forget it. And
Yeah.
but those are the things, is, let's say, it's much clearer, and is, let's say, oh yeah, this is not working, let's give a call.
Yeah.
Like,
It's straight to the point as well. Like, I really struggle to remember to put, because I think my brain is racing at a million miles an hour, and I just am focused on what I need to get done. And it's almost like I just need to focus on this, because if I let my focus fall out,
yeah,
then it's gonna go. So, I'll send you messages like, have you done this? Has this done? Like, no niceties. And that's so refreshing to me, because so many people have told me in the past that, like, that's rude, that I need to be more friendly. And I just think that, I mean, this is a whole nother debate in itself. And obviously, Heike, you're doing a workshop with us this month at Joyfully Different around relationships. But I think communication is a massive, massive topic when it comes to neurodiversity in business, because I put, in the past, I put so much effort into modifying my communication style in order to try to not upset people. And because I always got it wrong anyway, it was just really exhausting and still really, really frustrating. And so I think since my diagnosis, I felt really empowered to say to people that I work with, look, I do have a very direct communication style. I can come across as quite abrupt. I can forget to add niceties in. Like, it does not mean that I am upset. It does not mean that I don't care about you. It does not mean you can't talk to me. It does not mean I don't have time for you. Any of that. It just means that I am focused on getting the work done. When I'm in that zone of focus, that is my only focus. And I found that prefacing that has really, really helped to avoid other misunderstandings down the line. And if I hadn't had my diagnosis and was aware of what was happening for me, I wouldn't have felt empowered to have those kind of conversations, to advocate for myself. The same when it comes to, like, difficulty in emotional regulation. Like, I can appear to get very upset very quickly, and but on the flip side, I'll calm down really, really quickly as well. It's just like my emotions spike. And to be able to say to people, look, part of my ADHD is I do struggle to regulate my emotions. So if it seems to you like I do have quite a strong reaction to something, like, please don't worry.
Or I I'm the same. Don't worry. It's, let's say, even with me, my emotion is like I can get upset, and then 2 seconds later, I'm like talking normally again, and people, oh my god, what happened? I'm like, yeah, I just got a bit like, I go like, oh.
Yeah.
And then, but also this reminds me sometimes I think my mom had ADHD for sure, and we had both of that emotional dysregulation. Is, let's say, sometimes we got upset with each other, shout at each other. 2 minutes later, we were just talking with each other in a normal level again, and as if nothing happens. I think if people would have seen us from the outside, it was so different. And you hit the nail on the hammer on the nail. Is communication is so essential, but it is a two-way stream. You need to be open about your ADHD. You need to be explaining to also your clients, what are my boundaries, and that's a big thing. And I do, of course, also understand is, let's say, not everybody, if they say to me in an email, how was your day, that means that I need to give a whole essay about what I've done the last 2 weeks.
Most of the time I just completely forget to respond. Like if someone asks me, oh, oh, how was your day? How was your weekend? And then ask me a bunch of questions about work. I just respond to the questions about work, and then I'll send the email and I think, oh no, they asked me how I was as well.
Yeah. Oh, I do that also all the time. Is, let's say, they send an email, and then normally I follow up them with another email. Oh yeah, I hope everything was okay with you also. That, and I'm like, oh yeah, you need to be nice in an email to sometimes to people. And this is again is the same thing as, let's say, what you're saying is, it's not that we mean that to sound mean or that we don't care, but it is not a priority when we are talking about it.
Yeah. And I think because it's not a requirement, like to be asked how I am is not a requirement that I have for my communication. It's easy to forget that is something that other people need.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not saying that, I'm unwilling to adapt my communication style, but I don't think that the burden should always be on neurodivergent people to adapt their communication style. I think that there is room for everyone to be accommodated in terms of the communication style that they prefer. And I think that trying to train yourself to not make assumptions and read between the lines about people's communication, because one of the things I find myself saying all the time is, I find that there, in working relationships, particularly, a lot of people will assume there's a hidden meaning in what I'm saying. And then they'll decide that they know what the hidden meaning is and act like that meaning is true, and then not talk to me. Whereas, I always try and reassure people and I say, look, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. I'm a very, very factual, literal communicator. And it is highly unlikely that I will ever have any kind of double meaning in anything I say. Like you can take what I say literally. And I think, that's again something that I think more people really need to be aware of when it comes to neurodivergent communication styles.
Oh, definitely, and I agree that, and I promote that also. It's like what I say also in reasonable is, let's say, it doesn't need to be a one-way street up both sides, and that's the thing. Like sometimes, and somebody said it recently to me also about something. It's like, oh, I don't want to get you into trouble. I said, like, I'm more than capable of getting myself into trouble once or twice a month. Because again, is, let's say, I don't have a filter, and that's why I say sometimes I say something and people look at me, what did you just say? But I think with me the same is I speak the honest truth. Is, let's say, and that's something what is a little bit different with if you talk to somebody who's neurotypical, and that I don't mean that in a bad way, because they put more nuances on what they mean sometimes, and they can, because they simply said they think before they say something. It is that filter between is gone, and that can be sometimes difficult. A good example again is, let's say, oh, how was your day? me blurting out everything, well, neurotypical will say like, yeah, everything was good. Thank you. How was your day? Good,
Yeah.
thank you. And that's one of the things is, yes, that's what I learned is like, okay, somebody who is neurotypical doesn't want to learn my whole life story. So I'm like, oh yeah, they would like this. And it is not a biggie for me to say like, oh yeah, my day was good. Thank you. How was yours? So,
Yeah.
but then again, people need to learn also our common way of communication is much more direct, much more clear, much more, yeah, you can take it sometimes a little bit out.
It's like the whole stereotypical thing, you're sat around with a partner and your partner goes, oh God, I'm really sick of this house being a mess. And what they mean is, I would like you to tidy the house, please.
Yeah.
But what they say is, I'm sick of this. Now, I would just sort of look around and go, I don't think it's too bad.
Well,
and then that would cause an argument. Whereas if they'd have just said, look, actually, I feel like, I'd really like to talk to you. Please, can you put your phone down so I can have your attention? Like, that is something people have to say to me. If they want my attention, I have to explicitly say, please stop whatever you're doing, put your phone down, stop drawing your artwork, please, can I have your attention? I would like to make a request that we make a bit more effort to keep the house tidy. I feel like I have the burden of doing a lot of the tidying, and I would really like it if we could work together instead to keep the house tidy. So, how does that feel for you? Could we split the chores? Like, it's an explicit, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm sharing how it is for me, and I'm making a request of you that you somehow help me to keep the house tidy. And I'm going to give you a list of things to do. Like, I remember living with a housemate and getting into an argument because I am really not a clean person. And this was even before my diagnosis. I just said to her, look, rather than having this argument all the time, if you just tell me what chores you want me to do every week, I will do them. And she was just like, well, I just would want you to clean the bathroom. So I was like, okay, once a week, I will clean the bathroom. Done. And then that was that. But it's about that need for explicit instruction. And I just feel like direct communication that gets to the point, that is really clear, benefits everyone.
It does. Is, let's say, when I give training to businesses also, and I just need to look it up again because it's normally in the slide, and I look back at me just to be sure I'm saying the correct one. But it is, if you use neurodivergent communication, it improves communication between and efficiency within the business to 10 to 20%.
Wow.
So, because again, it's structured, it's clear. It doesn't say it's like, oh, would you like to do this? It's like, if you give an option to somebody especially with me also, and I like to avoid tasks sometimes. If you say like, oh, would you like this? Nah.
No. Yeah. My mum used to say that. Do you want to help me with this? And I'd be like, no.
But it's the same thing as then when I talk with parents. I was talking with somebody recently about PDA with their kids also. And I simply say it is, you're asking the wrong question to your kids. You're saying it is, and just to say with the caveat here also, because if people are listening, this is per child different. It doesn't work with everybody. It is, and I'm simplifying it here. But it is the way how you ask your child to do something. If you say to them, it's like, clean your room, they go like, no. But also sometimes if you ask them again, oh, if you don't mind, I had a long day, I'm tired, can you clean your room? You would do me a huge favor. Suddenly they do it.
Yeah.
So it is the way of communicating that is going to make the difference. And the same thing is with clear communication, saying it's like, we need to have this project done by the 12th of March, 2 o'clock. Most likely you will get it at 2 o'clock in your mailbox from me, not a minute earlier. But I will have everything done which you have structured, because if you give the exact details what I need, and this is something I communicate then also to my clients. yes, we talk about it, but then I need to have a clear plan also from your side. What do you want listed and like that? So, and that's a reasonable adjustment in communication also, because you work better, they get better work delivered, and it's much easier for us than saying it's like, oh yeah, just do something. Or yes, that looks really nice. Let's say if you design something, yes, that's really nice, but we will have a think about it. And then I'm like, just say it's horrible.
Yeah, just say
Oh,
what you don't like about it.
yeah.
Like then I can make it better. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that is always that's the biggest problem at the communication is the biggest problem I think,
Yeah.
and I see in most things.
But also to
It's
come back to what you were saying about the example that you gave with the child, where you're saying, you know, I've had a really long day, it would be doing me a massive favor. Like in task communication, one of the things that's really important to me is to understand the context around the task before I do it. So I want to know the why of why I'm being asked to do this. Why is it important? Why does it fit into the picture? Because to me, contextualization helps me to prioritize, and it helps with my motivation because I can understand why it's important that I do it. So I always do my best to contextualize tasks to other people as well.
Yeah, because in that way it is not seen as a task for you, more as a favor.
It's a favor, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a chronic people pleaser, so I will do a favor.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, but also from a communication perspective, I know we kind of loosely said we were going to talk about women in business today, so just bring it back to the tangent. I think that it's really interesting. Like a lot of the things that about my communication style were some of the biggest challenges that I faced in a business perspective. So like the difficulty in emotional regulation. Well, when you're a woman in a corporate space, you're perceived as being emotional anyway. So then when you add in the emotional dysregulation from ADHD being on top of it, you know, I've had some really quite hurtful comments in the past about how I'm too emotional, I care too much, I need to separate myself from the job a bit more, I need to toughen up, I need to not take things too personally. And you know, all of that has always been pretty impossible for me. And if I'm going to distance myself from a job, then I have to become really cold. And you know, before I quit my job, I feel like at work I was really not a nice person because I'd been forced to compartmentalize my job so much to stop myself getting upset. It's like I shut down a part of who I was. And then combining, you know, that with my very direct communication and the fact that, and again, I only found out after my diagnosis this was a neurodivergent thing, but being unaware of how the tone of my voice is sounding, I find it very, very hard to regulate the tone of my voice. A lot of people say that I sound quite aggressive a lot of the time, but I don't in my head I'm like, what, I'm really happy, like what
For me you're fine, so
why do you think I sound angry? But you know, on top of that, with a direct communication style, a lot of the time I was pushed back on in a way that I was told I was coming across as aggressive, you know, defiant, challenging, whereas I didn't see that kind of criticism being leveled at the men in the organization who were very direct communicators from my perspective. So there's that layered on top, which I think doubly creates communication issues for neurodivergent women, because I think we're all very familiar with the stereotype of the autistic white man who, you know, is like Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory, who everyone's like, ha, isn't he quirky? But you don't see that representation for, you know, even though it's not good representation, you still don't see that kind of representation for autistic women. And so I think that people are much more likely to, because of all the biases they have about how women should communicate, I think that then additionally feeds into that misunderstanding, you know, and then layer even on that, I have combined type ADHD, which means I've got all of the fun stuff from being inattentive and all of the fun stuff from being hyperactive, and the hyperactivity also comes in like in that I speak very, very fast, and I quite often will interrupt people in conversation, as I think I've done to you about 4 times during this conversation.
Oh
But
yeah, don't worry.
if I don't interrupt, it's almost like I'm so engaged with what you're saying. And if I don't interrupt you, the point I'm trying to make is just going to fall out of my head.
I'm a combined type also myself. And I think we click on a lot of levels also because our combined types are quite similar.
Yeah.
I will talk through you, you will talk through me. And those are the things. But before I go down a different rabbit hole on that one, but it's, let's say, with women, yes, I can also with my business trainings and like that one, no matter where I talk about, I always raise the subject neurodivergency and women
Mm.
because it is still so common, and same with ADHD, is that it's just a white male thing for kids.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even believe, it's like, oh, I'm 41. Oh, why did it take so long before you accepted that you have ADHD? It's like, yeah, it took a long time because the stereotypical idea of ADHD people a lot of think about is bouncy, what I like to call. It's like
Yeah.
all over the place, not sitting still, running, etc.
Yeah.
But I had a chat also with somebody, and there's not an exact figure because there's a couple of studies, and one says 15, other one says 25, 20%. But some studies say that only maybe 20% or 25% of all people with ADHD are aware that they have ADHD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that shows you already is, let's say, it is massively underdiagnosed or accepted.
Yeah.
But also the stereotypical idea of the people with ADHD as stereotypical as we know is a small group compared to the majority. It's the same thing with ASD, with autism. Is again, there needs to be more representation from women on that for sure, because it is a big subject and I'm quite passionate about that also. And people need to learn it is not only based on gender or skin color. I say always is, let's say, if you would have a poster boy, what people think, what is autism, I will fit it. But I am always saying that because it's such a subject that needs to be talked more about. I can write more change into it. Talking about women having it also, because if people don't understand, they don't want to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is also with me, if I have the same. It's like the volume of my voice is like I get sometimes, why are you shouting? It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not.
No, but I completely understand with women there's a different level because people go, if they already do to me, oh, you can't have ADHD or you can't have autism, especially if I go to a networking event. Oh, how can you socialize? I'm like, good God.
Yeah. And I, you know, I am just one of a whole generation of women and girls whose ADHD wasn't diagnosed from a young age because symptoms present so differently compared to men and boys. And like I think back to, so I was at primary school in like the early 90s. And I think we had 1 or 2 boys in every class of 30 that had an ADHD diagnosis. And I don't remember any girls at school that had ADHD, like at all.
But
And when I got my diagnosis, and I was, because my mum kept all my old school reports, so I was able to share my school reports from the age of 4 with, you know, thanks mum for holding on to those out of sentimentality, but I gave them all to my psychiatrist, and he said I was a textbook case of ADHD. Like all of these teachers writing about my frustration in certain projects, my emotional dysregulation, my high anxiety, my distractibility, my energy, my difficulties in communication with the other kids, and then as a teenager, my complete withdrawal into myself at school, and you know, then issues in my teens with, you know, alcohol, and it you know, it all just made sense. And I think that had I been a boy behaving the way I was behaving, even then, I'm not sure it would have been diagnosed, because I was very bright at school. I was very good at my schoolwork. I was a straight A student. I would, you know, and
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the time it feels like to get a diagnosis, you have to be underperforming academically as a child. Whereas again, not everyone with ADHD is underperforming academically, but that doesn't mean that they're struggling any less internally.
And that's a good one. And I completely agree with you. Just to stay on the topic of women is, let's say, I still hear from people if I talk with them, and this is not always in the capacity as for my work or something like that. Sometimes people just talk with their experiences, also network events. But if I hear mostly with girls, I still hear it's like, it is getting better. Some teachers are saying, oh yeah, it's maybe ADHD, but I still hear others saying, oh, it's just emotions. She's a girl. It's probably anxiety. It's not ADHD. And I'm like, could just go from the presumption directly. It's ADHD. Get that checked out. Get through that, but also throw away a bit about, again, like what you said also. But people, I'm born in the 80s. I started school in the 80s. In the 90s, I went to secondary. I went also, that's where my masking started 100%, 200, and I became a different person. I still remember people saying from the first to the second year, then the second year, oh, you changed a lot. But also when I grew up then, it's like ADHD was becoming a topic. Again, everybody was saying it's like, oh yeah, just give them Ritalin. I remember that people were saying that, okay. I say medications have a purpose, but don't take them if you don't want them. But the thing is let's say with that is, let's say the poster person for ADHD was being lazy, underachieving, being always in fights and trouble, and like that. And the same with autism. It's like, oh yeah, they have struggles. They can't socialize. They can't talk with people. They introverts, but they can't be an extrovert. Yes, I'm an introvert that can be extrovert when needed. Again, else I wouldn't do public speaking. Is, let's say, I would run away. But these are all presumptions what people are still stuck into, and especially also with women. And this is the most damaging thing is, and just to mention it also with mental health, suicide rates with people that have autism and ADHD is so much more higher. And life expectancy is like, again, this is who you follow. But some people say even in their 30s, early 50s and 60s, so much shorter. And if people don't start taking it serious within women, so much more, it has so many more effects.
And I think when undiagnosed neurodivergence is clearly such a huge factor in the mental health crisis in this country, I don't understand why it's not being addressed sooner. And you know, depending on the stats you read, you know, it was originally thought that maybe between 1 and 3 people were autistic, but now it's, people think it may be more like 10 to 15%, because of the lack of diagnosis in what would have been called Asperger's or high functioning. You know, that or, you know, as we call it now, low support needs. But that level of misdiagnosis is potentially huge. Like, one of the graphs that I always cite is, you know, people talk about, oh, everyone's got ADHD, everyone's got autism these days. Well, the graph that goes around as a way of illustrating it is the graph about the number of people in the UK that are left-handed, and how children at school in the UK used to be forced to write with their right hand when they were left-handed. And if you look at incidents of left-handed people, the graph is really low at the bottom going along. And then all of a sudden there's this almost vertical spike. And then it levels out again. Now, that doesn't mean that suddenly there was this massive explosion in the number of left-handed people being born. It just meant that when people stopped being forced to be a different way and realized that actually they could just function in the way that their body wanted them to function, there was this massive, that it was people then realizing they were left-handed and saying and declaring that they were left-handed. And where we are at the moment with neurodivergence is we are in that upward spike, and that is going up exponentially, and we will reach a point where diagnosis plateaus and reaches a new level, even if that's 20-30 times more prevalent than it used to be.
Well, no, I completely agree. And it's funny that you say that with left-handed and right-handed. My dad was left-handed. He just was born after the war in the Netherlands, and he was forced at school to write right-handed because
same with my dad. Yeah,
they had to do that. And again, my dad probably had autism and maybe also ADHD, and I got it somewhere. I still don't know where I got the dyslexia from in my family. Still trying to track that down. But yeah, it's also what you're saying is like, yes, we're having that spike because there's so much more awareness building up. And I had to chat with also BBC today, what I said before this episode. And I said one of the things is, let's say, there's so much more awareness, more movie stars and like that are coming out.
Yeah.
And that's important that people are aware that it is not just this is ADHD, but it can be so much more.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you have the 3 types of ADHD and most people are the combined. And it can be so much different. And also, it's, let's say, when people say, oh yeah, but you need to be like all the time on the move and like that, is I know some women that are more stereotypical ADHD than I am. So it's also fascinating to see when more of us are finally coming out of the closet, figuratively speaking, and accepting who we are. And I make also a point always, for me, it doesn't make a big difference if you're officially or not officially diagnosed.
Yeah.
As long as it's, for me, it's important, yes, not just one article and you think it's like I forget my keys once a year or once a month and I have ADHD. No.
No.
I always explain it is, let's say you go 70 miles an hour over the M25 if you're lucky.
Really? I don't think I've ever gone 70 miles an hour on the M25.
Yeah. Maybe a bad example, but I go 20,000 miles over it.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big difference. But I think if we start accepting that also, that would be much better in a way. It helps also a bit with the NHS, with the backlog, because I don't think everybody who has ADHD or autism wants to have, especially with ADHD, with the medications, wants to use medication.
No.
But they sometimes need to get the official diagnosis to get support.
Yeah.
Because some employers say like, oh yeah, we can't help you until you have an official diagnosis.
Yeah.
But if you come there with, and I'm not down talking them, but let's say depression or anxiety, you do get the support. Because people have accepted, yes.
Yeah, I went down the diagnostic route because I did want to try medication. But I think what also really surprised me about getting a diagnosis is for me personally, I felt a huge sense of validation. And I think that as someone who since the age of 14 has this, portfolio of various diagnoses that various different mental health professionals thought explain the way I was. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, even bipolar disorder. When I was a teenager, I do not have bipolar disorder. And all of that all of the traits that they diagnose me based on are all traits of ADHD. And so I think for me, getting the ADHD diagnosis was a huge sense of validation in the fact that I do not have these mental health conditions. They are not something that I have, not something I experience. And so it almost felt like it wiped the slate clean for me of relating to myself as someone who acted the way I acted because it was somehow pathologized and was something that needed to be fixed. Whereas actually, what needed to happen for me was to just construct my life in a way that worked for my ADHD, whereas the therapies I was having were the therapies for people with OCD, for people with bipolar. Like, they were not working for me, and yet nobody ever seemed to pick that up. They just let me carry on with these treatments that didn't really do much at all to improve my symptoms. And I remember at one point when I was struggling with an eating disorder, about 15 years old, my therapist said to me, "You do realize you're never going to get better from this. You're just going to have to manage it." And I was like, oh my God, you're sat here telling a 15-year-old that recovery is not possible from, something that's really damaging to her health and her mental and her physical health. But luckily that was all rubbish. But, I just think, and, obviously OCD and BPD do come under that neurodivergent umbrella, and the more we're understanding them, the more we're realizing they are distinct from mental health conditions. They are, something to do with the way our brains works, but they're not how my brain works.
No, I completely understand. And just to do the caveat also before I get attacked by somebody, I do understand also, like what you said, the validation with the assessment is important for certain people. So I find it important. It needs to still be there. But the thing is also is I want to help more people in a shorter time, and people need to find their own personal reasons. But also the things what you're saying now is, let's say, if I still had my dyslexia report from the Netherlands, I would never give it to you because then you need to learn Dutch. And it was in the 90s, so it was still this big piece of paperwork. But I would be interested to look back at it again. Unfortunately, disappeared in the years. But I remember they said a couple of things about me while I was waiting for that assessment. And looking back at it, and some of them is like, oh, he is a bit anxious and this and that. And again, these are the classic telltale signs, like this more. It is also, I think, a little bit to do with the sober thinking what we have where I come from. I come from a part of the Netherlands. You go to the doctor with your arm in your hand saying, yeah, this dropped off a week ago. Let's say that's a bit of the idea. So it's not the mentality that's so quickly. And I grew up on a farm, and I was in a spacious space where I could be myself. So that's maybe also why I went under the radar for a long time. But the thing is, let's say, and this is also one of the things why I love to talk with other neurodivergent people, is all our brains are different and we have a lot of similarities. And I always say to people, I like to say I'm neurodivergent and a constellation, because everybody is a little bit different. And you just need to say, this I stole from Matthew. So, but when he said that, I said that makes more sense to me, because maybe, yes, I always say to people, I have the classic labels, dyslexia, ASD, autism, and ADHD, and probably more. And people look at me like probably more, because I see, and this is my personal opinion, being neurodivergent, it is not only one thing.
Yeah.
What I see in a lot of people is, let's say, comorbidity. I see it in so many people. They have just one diagnosed, but they have traces of OCD.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of OCD. If I'm cooking, my whole, and this is hospitality days, I've been in the kitchen, my cooking island, let's say the area where you cook, needs to be clean. And I need to clean all the time during. But the funny thing, after I cooked and there's anything there, it can wait till the next day. So that's the funny thing where it goes. And while cooking, everything needs to be spick and span. And I clean and clean and clean. And it needs to be done, because if I don't do it, I get panicked because, oh yeah, this needs to be clean, that needs to be out of the way.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. And
yeah, I get what you mean. And there's that sense of it being the concept of the spiky profile of it being the kind of the spectrum, with everyone being able to map the, you know, the different traits they have on a spectrum and getting this spiky profile. And like, for me, I identify with pretty much 100% of the traits of ADHD. Like, my psychiatrist told me I was a textbook case of ADHD, which was like, oh, thank you. Straight A student again. But there are also, you know, I would say I then identify with, you know, many traits of autism, you know, probably up to like 50% of autistic traits I probably identify with as well. So then my profile is kind of ADHD with, you know, with those additional autistic traits that I identify as having.
Oh, same here. And it's like, I have interesting conversations sometimes in my head, who is going to win. Sometimes my autism wins over my ADHD, and sometimes my ADHD is, let's say, I like to have my bed all sorted in the morning, but my ADHD goes like, I can't be bothered. So, and that's the interesting thing is, and that's why I like also the same as, let's say, it's everywhere and a little bit there, because you can have multiple things, and sometimes one thing takes over the other thing in certain moments. Is, let's say, for me also, and this is a crossover between ADHD and autism. It's similar to both. Is, let's say, I need to have everything planned till the detail if I go somewhere. And I need to take always the routes what is clear, where I need to go by. I don't like surprises. Never surprise me, by the way.
I'm the same.
Yeah, but even if I'd rather drive a mile longer somewhere to take a route what is with less going from one road to another, more straight than that. Because, and also I came to the realization, it causes me anxiety and everything and stress. And I'm like, that 1 mile extra is not going to be the end of days. But the same thing is, and this is also something is, let's say, you can say, oh yeah, ADHD have it also, but I think it's also a crossover. It's like with people. I don't mind people, but I can't go into a room full of people. But I'm okay if I go and this is what I do with networking, and I never noticed it before, but now I know why I do it. I normally arrive 10-15 minutes before they start. Because it's quiet. I can find my spot, mostly near the food. And then it builds up slowly. And that I'm okay with. But it depends also sometimes on the room, it depends on the noise and everything, how long I can do it. So there's a lot of crossovers in that. Is, let's say, my ADHD can kick in with networking. It's not always useful, especially if we start talking about something that we're both passionate about. And I can talk for hours. So it is quite an interesting thing. And
one of the things that has really helped me that I've only discovered recently is that a massive source of my anxiety was my plan for the week being changed once I'd got it in my head what my plan for the week is. And the adjustment I made is that I use a call booking system in my diary. And if people don't book a call with me by the end of Friday for the following week, they have to wait till the week after, so that when I sit down on a Monday, I know what my week looks like when I have calls, which is probably why I forgot our call the other day, because it wasn't in my head as being there from the Monday, because we put it in last minute, and I never do that. And so I like to sit down in my week and I look and I know how many calls I've got that week, and I know where they are. They're color coded in my diary, so I can have a visual picture of which part of the day they're in my head. And that has helped me massively, because I know what my week is going to be like when I sit down. And it means that I'm ring fencing the time I need to do the things I need. And it's such a small change, but that has been a huge coping mechanism for me, and my resistance to change and my need to plan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that definitely. And I like your idea, actually, by the way. Maybe I'm gonna steal that.
I recommend it, because you sit down on Monday, you're like, what's my week like? Great. Now I know what my week's like. When people need me, this is when I'm going to the gym. This is when I'm going to cook my lunch. This is when I'm going to walk my dog.
It's the same
thing. It really helps.
It's the same thing as, let's say, when I say I book in time to spend time with my daughter. It's like people look at, why do you need to? Because I need to have that time, because I know I switch off my phone and everything, and I know this is time that I focus completely on there. It's also something what I advise sometimes to parents, saying is like, make that time slot that you spend time on that, and it's getting that structure. And I like the idea actually of, if by Friday you didn't let me know next week, it's the week after, because I like also to know what is happening that week, because I can schedule all my work around it.
100%. Schedule work around it, and schedule time for yourself. Like, because what I found is when I just let people book calls into my diary at the last minute, it would eat into time that I had ring fenced for myself to do what I know is necessary for my own self-care, like going to yoga, spending some time creating, going out for walks, going for coffees with friends. And I found myself going, I've got a work thing, I'm really sorry, I can't, just way too often. And so I'm the same as you. Everything gets blocked in my diary with equal importance, whether it's going to the gym or it's a client meeting.
Oh, and then I can't really add anything to that. I'm the same. It's like, you don't get me often that I don't have something to say about something. No, but it makes me think, and again, coming back to, and this is the good thing, why as a community we need to talk with each other a lot, is, let's say, we can learn a lot from each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And just coming back, because we were talking about women, ADHD, and in business, I don't think we discussed too much about it. But again, these are some of the topics, especially with women, why we need to talk about it, because we need to learn more about it. There's also learning where you struggle about it. Because one of the things why I enjoy talking with neurodivergent women, business or not, is I can listen about their stories. Because one of the things what I use in anything what I do, and it's always evolving, I use the feedback what I get from other people.
Yeah.
And the only thing what I can say with that, you get stronger, more wiser, more better during the time. And we need to get away from that society that we think this is ADHD, this is neurodivergency, to more, you will never get 100% what everybody wants. The utopian idea that's never going to happen. But we need to get somewhere close enough towards it.
Yeah.
Getting to there. It's, let's say, unfortunately, it takes time. It's, let's say, if you have a look at women's rights, it's been not that long ago that we celebrated 100 years of voting rights for women. And if you have a look in between that time and now, how long it took already, and there's still a lot more work to do to where women are now. Because even not that long ago, I don't know here in the UK, but in the Netherlands, I think in the 60s, 70s still, women were not allowed to buy something big, like a washing machine or anything else, because they were not, or a car even, because they were seen not as mentally capable of doing that.
Oh my God.
But they were allowed to do the household income and everything. They were doing that at home. But they
I mean,
had
to
to
be honest, having agent ADHD, I would quite like to not be allowed to buy big, expensive things.
yeah, one thing actually what I did in Japan is, let's say, one of the things what I'm now doing is, let's say, I come back tomorrow and then I start thinking, do I really need this? And I think I saved about 600, 700 pounds of extra expenses on that trip because else I would have bought, oh yeah, this, that, that. But yeah, that's impulsivity. So I do agree with that point for myself also. And the same thing, I saw your video clip before this one. It's the same thing as management tools and like that.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh
God.
yeah,
The shiny new productivity tool that's going to fix my life. Yeah. On board of it 2 weeks later.
yeah. And and this is the funny thing is like, well, I will say to people if they come with access to work, oh, access to work suggested me to get this nice shiny tool, what you're saying. I'm saying it's not gonna work. They look at me, why not? Try it. You're gonna do it for 2 weeks and then you come back. And
What helps me the most is over there where you can't see it. I have a wall planner and I started doing it last year. I have a 12-month wall planner. It's like A1 size, it's massive. And I block out what I'm doing for the whole year.
yeah,
As it goes in my diary, and then I can see, oh, that month's looking really busy.
yeah.
Better not put anything else in that month. And it's better than any notebook or to-do list or calendar.
Yeah. But you're putting a point there is, let's say, a lot of people that are neurodivergent, they like visual confirmation.
Visual, and also because I can see the whole year,
Yeah.
I struggle to think very far and conceptualize the future. But when I can see it, whereas if I'm just looking at a week by week planner, I'll kind of put stuff. It's like, I don't know if you ever watched Parks and Recreation, but it's like where April schedules all of the meetings for like one day in the future.
Yeah.
and then it all happens that they have to do like 90 meetings in a day or something. Like that's where I get myself if I can't see what it looks like.
I'm guilty on that also. That's what I really religiously put everything in my agenda. Hospital appointments with my daughter and like that. Because if I don't, and people say like, okay, you do something on the day. Oh yeah, yeah, boom. And then suddenly, maybe a day later, I go like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Is, let's say, and then I go like, oh yeah, can we move it?
Yeah.
Or something like that. But also is, let's say, sometimes it's, let's say, if you book your week so full, you can't really do anything else.
Oh, I am the queen of, I'm really sorry, some things come up, which means I have double booked myself.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to comment on that one.
If you ever see me, hear me say I'm really sorry, something's comes up, it means I double booked myself and I'm too ashamed to tell you what I've done.
Yeah. But actually, with communication, we should be honest about it.
I know.
Is, let's say, oh yeah, we double booked and like that. And I know we're going to talk a bit more about it on the 30th, but one of the things is, let's say, what we should do. And I know I preach a lot of things sometimes and I don't do it myself. Because again, but I explain to people as also I have still the trauma and everything and still partly of the masking. But it should be quite normal and saying it's like, yes, sorry. I double, not even saying sorry. I have a double booking. Is it okay if we can move it to another week?
Yeah.
And like that, it shouldn't be something that we need to feel ashamed or frightened of to talk about. And the same thing is like I shared on Sunday, first your post and then late in the day, the other one of my friend Isaac. And I was thinking already on that day, why do I say sorry so much? Why do I apologize that I sent us an email a week late because I didn't do it directly? it's not because I didn't give a lot more attention. And the thing is, if you were in a hurry, you would have been already the next day on the phone with me.
Yeah.
So you can say like, yeah, it took a bit longer to take back to you, but this and this and this we can do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuances in communication, and I know again is let's say this is not something that will be applicable for everybody for various reasons and like that, but it is something you should be thinking about how to make your communication clear, but also being more your honest self
Yeah.
and not being afraid what the other person thinks.
I think that's the root of a lot of it. At the root of it is a lot of shame. And I think when you, like, from my experiences having ADHD, I have been told, you know, that's rude. Don't do that. Don't say that. Don't say it like that. Da, da, da. And you get into this default of, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Like, I feel like I just spent most of my 20s apologizing for being who I was and not really understanding why. And it's a really hard habit to break when you're so used to apologizing that but I get it. But I agree with you, and I do try really, really hard to, you know, a lot of the time I'll write, I'm really sorry, but then I'll go back through my email and I'll take out, I'm really sorry, and then just start the sentence.
Oh, but again, that's why I say I preach a lot, and sometimes I do it myself. It's the same thing when I do SEO. I say to people, do this and this and this, and I don't do it myself. But again, is let's say what you say. That's I wanted to add also. Anybody till the age of 10 and 12 will have between 10 and 20,000 negative feedback sessions already in their life.
Wow.
Saying the things, let's say, oh, why can't you sit still? Why are you being lazy? Why are you being dead? Why this? Why that? Etc. Again, it depends where with the neurodivergent condition, what affects them the most. Is let's say, oh, why can't you just do that? So that has an impact. And I explain to people also, it's like what I do is to help a younger generation. I can say to people, I can't be completely saved anymore. I will not be 100% anymore the person I was when I was younger than 10. And people look at me like, oh my God, that's so sorry. But I came to the realization my mental health issues, my scars are too deep entrenched into myself that they can go away. But I have learned to live with them. I'm a much happier before anybody. I'm happy. I'm much more content than before. But my RSD, my PTSD, everything else around it, it will not disappear. But I'm working and coping better with it because a lot of the RSD, what we have, come also back from those negative moments and our voices in our head saying, because it can be your parents, grandparents, can be friends, can be teachers, can be a lot of people around you, especially close to you, saying to you, it's like, oh, why can't you do this? Why are you being difficult? Why are you not performing on that? It's the same thing as, let's say, with maths. It's like, oh, why can't you do it? Because you don't have the interest in it. And that gets the voices in your head saying, it's like, oh, yeah, but they all said, like, oh, you're not good enough. You can't do this. You can't do that. And much more. But I know.
And also, like, when you overlay that with, you know, the lens of intersectionality, like the more you add into that in terms of the criticism that people receive from, you know, if add in being a woman, you know, then there's additional feedback on your behavior. Add in being a queer person or member of the LGBTQ community, again, that's it. Layer on being a person of color, like that, then, you know, those little pieces of negative feedback, those little microaggressions just get amplified and amplified and amplified and embedded. And I think that is something that is not talked about. The intersectionality of neurodivergence is something that particularly people like us as white spokespeople in, you know, need to be talking about more.
Yeah. And that's also the reason is, let's say, why in all my training I pick up on women, but also with it is not gender based, it's not race based, etc. It doesn't matter with the color of your skin or anything, who you are, and it's important to say. And also what I just is, let's say, discrimination in the workforce is, let's say, when I used to say I'm dyslexic, thank you for applying, but we're not going to continue for you with you. If I wouldn't say anything, I get a job.
Which
Because
is
that,
illegal. It's illegal to
it's
discriminate on
yeah,
that basis.
but they would never admit it.
No.
Funnily enough, they did one time a poll on with managers that hire, and it was anonymous, of course, but more than 50%,
Yeah.
I think 50% said like they wouldn't hire anybody who's neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I still think then another 25 is lying.
Mm-hmm. And as an educated, self-sufficient business owner, like, again, I have that layer of privilege of being able to be really vocal about my neurodivergence, whereas a lot of people don't.
And that's also, I'm quite focused. Like, say, you know that my LinkedIn and my Facebook is sometimes hammered with it. And I say to people, I know people will not hire me because I say what I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I say to people, I don't, I try to keep my language clear, because not that I get in problem with YouTube or something or something like that in a bit, is I don't give a damn if you, because you are not the person I want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're being already biased, and you're not the person probably also that wants to change.
Mm-hmm.
If you were interested about what is neurodivergency or being neurospicy, you would be asking questions. But if you already have that stand, is, let's say, oh, a person with autism is too difficult. No, it's not. They can do so much more. And studies again show 230 to 140% more efficient than your standard employee. As long as, again, communication, as long as you communicate correctly with them.
Yeah.
And also other things, let's say, like with ADHD, flexibility in hours, work, is, let's say, your person with ADHD would be probably your best and most loyal employee you ever can get.
Oh, yeah.
But you need to also honor it, is, let's say, today I'm also a little bit, is not 100% my day, so I'm just not doing everything. But I will catch it up all in the next day again. So these are the bit and pieces, but I know also we are a bit over time now.
That was always going to happen.
Yeah. It's standard is, let's say, agendas. Yes, I tried that, but that doesn't work.
We did about 15 minutes talk about women in business, so
Yeah.
hopefully people have got a lot from the conversation anyway, just in terms of affirmation and understanding.
Yeah. But yet the biggest point taking out women in business, but also in the general, and let's say also depending on gender, sexuality, etc. There is so many levels we need to still work on it. Also, an emotional. It is just the end. Also, a little bit is, let's say, if I get a meltdown or you get a meltdown, is also perceived differently. If I hit a pillow and start shouting, I have a big chance that I get tasered on the floor because of being aggressive. While with a woman is, let's say, oh, again, they're just being emotional.
Yeah. She's crazy, unstable. It's all of those stereotypes.
And that's what I hear. We're not unstable. And the thing is, let's say, again, with reasonable adjustments, is, let's say, if you know that your staff members can have a meltdown, what are the protocols then? Let's say I'm using it as a business term. What's the protocol which you do then with that person?
Yeah.
Let them go into the yard. I know somebody who throws her husband's shoes through the carriage. If I have a meltdown, I just need to be by myself, shout, scream, punch a pillow, leave me for 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. And I come out again, and it's like I do if nothing happened. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked on, and there's a lot of stigmas already on being neurodivergent, but then also if you have the additional layers on top of that, it makes it even more worse. And this is also something which and I find it always funny when people say, and makes me cry also almost, It's like when people say to me, it's like, why is talking about neurodivergency more important than talking about gay rights? I'm like, it's both of them are important. And the funny thing is also,
And
if you
both
look,
of them are massively linked, because the incidence of
wanted to say that,
neurodivergence in the queer community is much higher than in the general population.
oh yeah, and that's I wanted to add that. And sometimes I say to people, it's like I say, oh, I'm pansexual, and people go like, oh my god, this is another word adding to the whole list. And I'm saying like, no, pansexual sexuality is the over sexuality, because it is on different levels where you can get satisfaction. Is, let's say, if you talk to me about having sex with somebody in sex, it would be with a woman. I prefer women, but I can get stimulation also in conversations with men or in activities and like that, which is in a different way, but not in a sexual way as the majority of the population understands what is sex.
Yeah,
So,
because you've got the sexuality spectrum, you've got the romantic spectrum,
yeah.
you've got the whole sapiosexuality of that connection with people's minds. And I think that, you know, without generalizing, just as I'm about to generalize, but my theory is that because neurodivergent people think differently to the norm, there is much more flexibility and fluidity around the way that we think about our sexuality and our gender identity. You know, like I use she, they pronouns because I feel like a woman most of the time, but sometimes I'm a bit, so I'm, you know, I wouldn't say I was non-binary, but I would say I was quite gender fluid.
Yeah.
And, you know, in terms of my sexuality as well, like I've been openly bisexual since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And so I think that and within the trans community as well, there's a very, very high prevalence of autism. And I think that just generally as neurodivergent people, we are much less inclined to prescribe to social norms and be much more willing to embrace a full spectrum of sexuality and gender than people that conform to neuronormativity in multiple ways.
And it's the same with me. Is, let's say, it's like I don't like to use the word I don't care if whatever you are. I do care, because I care that you're happy who you are. So for me, it's, let's say, I like to use extremes. It's like, I care about you if you want to identify yourself as a tree. And again, I'm just using extremes.
Yeah.
I say, I care. I'm happy that you have something where you feel yourself identified in, and I'm happy about it. Doesn't mean that I need to be identifying myself, but that's the nice thing about our community, because again, also we look at things in a different way, under the box, up top of the box, side of the box, around the box. And the definition of man and female to me is just something with the hierarchy, or let's say, like in old fashioned, the man.
The man, the patriarchy.
The patriarchy. Long live anarchy. No. I'm not an anarchist, people, just to be. Just wanted to put a bit of humor in between, but what is a definition of a man and a woman? A definition is by that somebody decided this is a man, this is a woman. But for me, the question is like, why?
Yeah, it's all made up. Gender is performative. Oh my, this is a conversation for another day, right?
Yeah. Because I think if we start with this, I think we're going to have an episode till 6 o'clock today.
Let's talk about how gender doesn't exist.
Yeah.
What?
but it's with a lot of things in life. It is the same thing as, let's say, marriage. Yes. Doesn't need to be between man and woman. No. Yeah. It's just a union of people, and you can have even a look at that in different ways. It doesn't need to be the classical marriage in front of the church, or it can be so many things. But yeah, this is, before we go down a rabbit hole, different. And this is why schedules and agendas don't work with us.
No, and I'll come back again to have a different conversation on another day.
Oh yeah, you're more than welcome. I think we can fill a whole year with these conversations.
Yeah.
No worries. But yeah, let's hang up before people start also thinking they can continue for hours and they go like, I need to do something.
Welcome to Wednesday, everyone.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to my next holiday already. Not after this conversation, by the way.
God, I need a holiday now.
Yeah. Oh, good. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for joining me today. It was a pleasure, and it was good fun. Yeah, good fun talking. There will be another episode next month. It will be with Matthew, Mark, and myself, and we'll be talking about neurodiversity in the justice system. And I will be letting know when that is soon. For the rest, is there anything you would like to add till the end?
No, I think that's everything. Just if you are watching and you are a neurodivergent entrepreneur, business owner, business leader, please do get in touch and or go to joyfullydifferent.co to find out more about what we do to support neurodivergent business owners.
Perfect. And I will stop